Welcome, everybody. We're glad that you could take the time to be with us today. We had originally scheduled this meeting to give you updates on how some of the adaptive learning courseware implementations were going at the two campuses with our panelists and guests, the provost from both those institutions. Given the COVID-19 crisis, we felt it was more important to share with you some of the things that they're doing on their campus to one, effectively move to remote learning and to continue operations as we all stay at home and trying to wait out the virus. I'm Karen Vignare, and I'm the Executive Director of the Personalized Learning Consortium at the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities. We are pleased to be here today. The PLC is an organization and a department of the APLU that has been focused on the effective use of technology to improve and scale best practices, particularly for teaching and learning. We are also pleased to be part of the Every Learner Everywhere network that was started more recently in 2017 by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, bringing together network partners that are all focused on both the equity around student success, along with how do we use digital teaching, digital learning in a way that promotes that equity. I'm very pleased to have with me two panelists. Dr. Beth Bohm, Executive Vice President and University Provost at the University of Louisville. And I know I didn't say that correctly, Beth, but I'm gonna let you correct everybody. And then Dr. Noel Wilkins, Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at the University of Mississippi. First, just a welcome to both of these individuals. I want to say that they have been instrumental in helping the PLC figure out how to do our work in a way that's effective at institutions and working in a collaborative way. We have appreciated both their guidance and how they have motivated staff, and we appreciate the staff that we work with who work up through the Provost's office, who are doing the hard work on the ground about fixing well, I shouldn't say fixing, improving the use of digital learning. But today we're really focused on how these universities are responding to COVID. So I'm gonna introduce Dr. Boehm a little bit more, with a little bit more of her bio, and then she's gonna share a little bit about what they're doing. We are gonna have Q&A, so please use the Q&A function. And that's where we'll take Q&A questions. We're gonna have about 20 minutes of discussion from our panelists, and then we'll move right into that Q&A. So Dr. Beth Bohm was appointed Executive Vice President and University Provost at the University of Louisville in 2018. She joined the university as an assistant professor of English in 1987 and has served in the Provost's office since 2009, serving as an associate provost for faculty affairs, vice provost for graduate affairs, vice provost for academic affairs. She also served as dean of the School of Interdisciplinary and Graduate Studies prior to her current role. As executive vice president and university president, Beth is not only responsible for setting the university's course through collaboration with faculty, staff, and students, but is also charged with assuring it stays on that course. Boehm Dr. Beth Bohm was twice awarded the College of Arts Sciences Distinguished Teaching Award and has been selected as the University Distinguished Teaching Professor in 2003. And Beth is a valued member of the Provost group here at APLU as well. So Beth, why don't you just give us a little bit of information about how you guys have adjusted during this crisis?
Okay, first, the name is Boehm, and it rhymes with game, or as I tell my students, they can remember it by rhyming it with lame. But let me just say that what I'm saying is probably not unique to the University of Louisville. We all have had rapid transitions to whatever world we're in right now. But I will say that I was blissfully ignorant because my son got married on March 6th. And it was probably the last big hurrah in Louisville before we went back to work on March 8th and canceled classes on March 11th, or canceled face-to-face classes on March 11th and went to remote almost immediately. So I was kind of blissfully ignorant in the week before because I'd taken a week off to prepare for the wedding. And we came back and hit the ground running. We had not been totally ignorant. Of course, we had been having weekly meetings to talk about the what ifs, but the what if became necessary really quickly. At March 6th, we had no active cases in Louisville. March 7th, we had our first. And when I returned to work on March 8th, we were ready to confront this. And we've had a governor who's been pretty proactive too in eliminating or in instituting social distancing. So March 11th, we said we were going online. We were on spring break that week. So our faculty were gone, but March 12th, the Delphi Center for Teaching and Learning under the leadership of Gail Rhodes immediately began putting up trainings for faculty so that they could figure out how to take their courses from face-to-face to online. We had 4 intense days of training because we extended spring break by 2 days. So we extended spring break to the Monday and Tuesday after the original week. And then we started remote learning on Wednesday, the 16th. So it was a very quick transition. In those 5 days, I think that we trained over 600 faculty in at least some aspect of online pedagogy, whether it was Panoptica, whether it was Collaborate, whether it was simply figuring out how to use some of the tools in Blackboard that had not been used by faculty who were face-to-face. So our faculty, I cannot tell you how proud I am of them for rising to this challenge. They were required to send a note to students by that first Wednesday, and we think that everybody did, or almost every, I won't say everybody, never say everybody, but we believe that most people did send that note explaining to students how they were going to use the remote environment. Students, I will tell you, were really nervous about the move to online. We had many requests for students to withdraw from class once we made the announcement that we were going remote. And what we did is we said we're not going to process any withdraws until the end of the semester. They were already past the date where they would get refunds, so it has no impact on money that might have been returned to them. They were already too late to get money returned. But we decided that we wanted to sort of give them the opportunity to try the online environment. So that was one decision that we made. We don't know how many people are just waiting until the end of the semester to exercise that. But we do know that by not taking those withdrawals, we have encouraged some students to stick to it and to try it. And we made it easier by instituting a pass-fail policy. That pass-fail policy allows students to switch any course and as many courses to pass-fail grading by the last day of the semester. So they have up until the very end of the semester to make that switch. Courses that receive a P will count for credit, and they will also fulfill program requirements. So this is one place in which we sort of, as a leadership group, decided to override faculty governance. I will tell you that for beginning on about March 11th, we had daily meetings with our leadership team, and it was over 50 people. It included the deans, the vice provosts, faculty senate leader, staff senate leader, student government. It was a very big group. They were all on teams. But what that allowed us to do was to make decisions very quickly and to implement them. So I didn't have to, as part of a small team, say, well, let's try this pass-fail, and then take it to the deans, and then take it to the faculty senate. We could all kind of talk it through and make those decisions quickly. The pass-fail policy has been hugely popular on our campus. Even students who are not taking advantage of that option are so grateful that they have it, that they see, and the faculty, I will tell you, not a single faculty member at the University of Louisville has written to me complaining about the pass-fail policy, and normally they would. They have been compassionate, recognizing that students are uncertain. I will tell you that I also sent out a note to faculty saying that some of them were worried about evaluations, right? Suddenly they're going online. They've never taught online. And I said, well, we're going to extend to you the same kind of pass-fail policy in some ways, which is that we will still ask students to evaluate you, but we will let you decide whether those files, evaluations go forward in your file for annual review or for promotion and tenure cases down the road. We also have called into being a policy that we already have on the books that allows people to extend a tenure track clock. So any faculty member who is pre-tenure this semester may elect to ask for a extra 6 months, extra year on the tenure clock. All they have to do is invoke that policy by the end of their 5th year on the track. And so they might decide now, they might be in their 2nd year and think, man, I don't know if I'm going to need it or not. But if they get to the end and they decide that this kind of curtailed their progress, we will allow them to ask for it at the end. We have urged our faculty to be compassionate and flexible with deadlines and students who may have internet access. And our students have reported that their faculty have done so, that they've been really compassionate. One case, you asked me to share an individual case. We have a student government leader who all along has been saying faculty are not going to be nice to us. Faculty are going to hold it against us if we take the pass-fail. Faculty are going to complain. And I said, why don't you just trust us? You know, just trust us that we're going to do the right thing. Well, he had an incident in his own family with illness connected to the virus. And he said his faculty members, to a person, were compassionate, bent over backwards to meet him where he was. And he said, you were right, I should have just trusted. So I'm feeling really positive about those things. The other thing that I would just mention is that we have moved our summer classes all online. We're also, we run our online classes usually at a premium. Students pay extra to take an online class. This summer, because we're only going online, we are charging them face-to-face costs. So this will be a little bit of a revenue loss to us, but we want to make sure that students stay on track. And we have, so far, we're actually up in our registrations for summer. Now, I don't know how that will, we've only been registering since March 31st. So I'm not sure if that will hold or not. But right now, we're up above where we were this time last year. I do think that we are upping our training. Gail Rhodes and the Delphi Center have done an awful lot to add classes for our faculty so that for summer courses, they should be better courses. I'm just going to say some of our faculty we know just had to, I've been using this word, I don't think Gail likes it, but some of our faculty slapped it up. All right, you know, they just were trying to meet a deadline. They got back on Sunday night from spring break and had to be online by Wednesday. They took a quick Delphi online module and put things up. All right, well, that's all right, right? It's an emergency situation. We don't want the summer to be an emergency situation, so we are asking faculty to train in order to put their classes online. And Gail has developed, we already have a kind of Delphi U, we call it, which is an online training to tell people what best practices are for putting courses online. She is putting that program online so that we can make have many more faculty make use of it. So those are the things that we did for online. And I do want to say one other thing about resources for students. We made advising available online and through email. We decided to keep our early registration on schedule, but we wound up lifting some bursar and advising holds in order to make sure that students could register. So that could be one reason our numbers are up right now, is because we took off advising and bursar holds, but we still encourage students to seek the help of advisors. We have a Reach tutoring service, and it went online right away. We already have a small virtual part of that, but we took it fully virtual, and our students have been making great use of that. Our writing center went entirely virtual, and again, we had a small number of tutors who were virtual before, but everybody went virtual, they're very busy. So our students are making good use of them. We have library resources, of course, available electronically, and our library has remained open, not so much with the face-to-face of librarians, but so students who were on campus or live in Louisville and had no other access to internet could make use of the library. And we have security there, and security checking IDs, so only students can get into the library. It's not available the way it normally would be to the public, to keep the numbers small. And we have at any one time between 50 and 100 students in the library. That's small enough number that we are socially distanced. People walk through and make sure that they're socially distanced. So we have not found any problem with doing that, but we felt it was important, particularly for our lower income students who do not have access to internet. The other thing we did was we kept the dorms open for students who requested it. They had to ask to stay, and we have 103 students who remained in our dorms. And we provide pickup food service for them twice a day. And they, they're all in single rooms now as a result of having fewer. So they're socially distanced. And we believe of those students, half of them are Pell eligible students. So that we know that we are serving students whose home is our campus, and we could not kick them off campus. We did not want to kick anybody off campus. We also have some international students who are part of that mix. And then we have a whole lot of affiliated apartments on our campus. We did not ask anybody to leave an apartment where they had their own room and bathroom. And most of those students have stayed. So we have a lot of students, but of course they're not on the meal plan. So we're not providing food for those folks, but they're living just as they would live in any apartment. So I think I'll stop there and let Noel talk.
Dr. Boehm, that was a very useful description of all the work that you're doing, and it certainly is a pleasure to introduce our second panelist. Dr. Noel Wilkins is Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs, Professor of Pharmacy Administration, and Research Professor in the Research Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences at the University of Mississippi. Noel is a pharmacist, a scientist, and an administrator who earned both his Bachelor of Science and his Doctor of Philosophy degrees at the University of Maryland, Baltimore. Prior to becoming provost, Dr. Wilkins served as chair, center director, and associate provost. He's been recognized for his service contributions to the School of Pharmacy and the university, has received the school's Pharmaceutical Science Teaching Award 3 times. Dr. Wilkin has an extensive involvement in university operations. And I'm just going to read the numbers here just because you all might be interested in how many times they need to connect with various folks, including 60 university level committees, task forces, and initiatives, almost 50 school level committees, task force initiatives, and 25 national service roles and over 10 years in the provost office. Dr. Wilkin, I welcome you, and we would really appreciate hearing a little bit about the scope of how University of Mississippi has adjusted during this COVID virus.
Great, thanks, Karen. Appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate hearing from Beth the reactions that they've had at the University of Louisville. That is helpful for us to share these stories and also share our experiences so we can take away opportunities and also take away some lessons that might help us not only through this crisis, but things that might happen in the future. I don't think I have to tell anyone that this is a very difficult time, and a time that's pushed us to actions and limits that we either hoped that we would never have to take or thought we would never have to implement. And I'm sure that many have experienced that these actions and the disruptions to operations and the overall economy were things we only expected to read about in history books. Back when the plague hit society, or the flu of 1918, closing the university would have been their only options. Through technologies to support distance learning, we really do have the option to continue some of the critical activities, the mission critical activities, and help our students to stay on track for graduation. Our reaction, and I have the privilege of describing these to you, but like on the campus of the University of Louisville, our reaction to this was the work of many, many people. And I want to make sure I recognize a few by name: Tony Amiter, Bob Cummings, Josh Eiler, Patty O'Sullivan, Donna Strum, Rich Forget, Charlotte Pegues. And I'm leaving out hundreds of people who have really made this work. But those individuals in our academic innovations group, and also in our provost office and in student affairs, have really helped to ensure that our reactions were measured, but they were also appropriate to help keep our community safe. I'm going to give an overview of how we responded and some key takeaways, and then I look forward to a discussion and learning from your campuses as well, because I think we really are using this as an opportunity to come together as an academic community. On March 6th, I sent a message to the faculty about academic continuity planning prior to spring break, which for us was March 3rd through the 13th. We convened a Keep Teaching working group, and that was only 32 days ago. It's hard to lose, or easy to lose track of time, or to think about how long we've been in this situation. But that literally was just over a month ago that we sent our first message to faculty to start thinking about what it would be like to take their courses online. On March 12th, we announced extended spring break to allow faculty to prepare, announced online courses until further notice. Students were encouraged to return to their homes and not come back to campus. We still made housing available for those who needed it. About 200 students are still housed on our campus. We encouraged all faculty and staff to telecommute, announced cancellation of all events, and imposed a self-quarantine for all those returning from international travel. Again, just 26 short days ago. We then announced support for moving courses online through our academic innovations group and some of the people I've mentioned. They launched a Keep Teaching website and started with our extended spring break, offering courses every day, twice a day, to faculty to help move their classes online. We, like the University of Louisville, have a course that faculty go through to transition to the online teaching environment. We felt like that might be too difficult to stand up and help every faculty member on campus. And so what they did was started hosting workshops twice a day throughout the entire spring break week, and then providing support and resources to our faculty. I also want to mention that IT played a critical role. Our Chief Information Officer in IT certainly helped us to make sure that those platforms were available, while at the same time navigating all the dynamics of being a state institution with all its procurement challenges and procurement requirements and other things. Those created some issues for us, but we were able to navigate them very effectively with the teams that we had in place. If I look at the key elements of our response, to give you some key takeaways, one of the main factors for the success in our response was the establishment of these teams, bringing together key people in essential areas. We had teams around incident response, business continuity, teaching, learning, research, and summer activities. And so these then extended throughout our community to pull in the essential people to discuss and make recommendations as to how we could adjust. We focused on only essential activities that were necessary for our fundamental operations, critical research, and mainly supporting distance learning, and then all the other functions that support those activities. We created a business continuity framework to guide our units in their thinking about what they should do and what they should continue. And then we sought alignment with those frameworks with the mayor's and the governor's stay-at-home orders as they came out, and then helped to keep the focus on what was known the last day a decision had to be made for upcoming activities. It was easy to get stymied by the uncertainty of not being able to predict what the possibilities might be or when this might be over. And so what we focused on is, what do you know on the day you have to make a decision in order to do this successfully? Like other universities, we passed grading options for our students. We're allowing our students to convert their assigned grade to either a Z grade, or a P grade, which is a passing grade. The Z grade does count for prerequisites. The passing grade counts, but doesn't count for necessarily all prerequisites in the curriculum. All efforts are supported by web pages and communication. We publish a daily digest with updates that come from all over campus. We also met every single day with vice chancellors, deans, and directors to send out information, identify issues, answer questions. Our senior leadership group in the chancellor's cabinet met regularly as well to make sure that they were staying abreast of the issues and making decisions that needed to rise at their level, and then also achieve alignment. To support student success, we're tracking Blackboard logins to the course level, finding students who have disengaged, and then reaching out to them to determine how to help out of our Center for the Study of Student, or for the Center for Student Success. And then our students are able to complete a web form. If they are struggling with a particular issue, they just go to the website, they click on a series of issues that they're facing, and then that goes off to a caseworker who then reaches out to the student to engage them. We moved our counseling center to telemental health very quickly, so they started scheduling appointments with students right away. And then we also promoted telehealth options for faculty, staff, and students where available. If I were to focus on the teaching strategies, we focused on learning objectives, and I think most faculty do. But it was easy for them to think, okay, how do I take what's in the classroom and just move it online? But that's not going to work in this environment. They had to think back to the learning objectives of what are those key objectives that need to be accomplished, and how are you going to do that with the dynamics that you're now facing? And so that required us to move away from synchronous testing in many cases, develop assessments that were conducive to that environment. Think of a way to cover material asynchronously and only use synchronous education as necessary. And when you do, stay within your allotted time frame, which also creates issues for students. To take an example from a hands-on course like ceramics, I had some interactions with one of our faculty members there, and he had determined that the hands-on portion covered to date in his class was sufficient for that portion of ceramics. So then he was able to build on that foundation and cover the other learning objectives that had to be met for that particular course. He may say that it doesn't look like what he started the semester, or the course he started the semester with, but he's confident that all the learning objectives are being met. And that philosophy extends to just about everything we're doing. In honors and awards ceremony that had to get canceled, what are the key things that we do for students in that environment? Recognize them, give them an opportunity to hear from faculty who had won awards. And so taking that to the online world, we had to think about how do we accomplish those objectives as well. In the labs, some felt like the covered hands-on material activities that they performed were covered in the first half. Some feel like they haven't gotten there yet, and so they're doing demonstrations or mailing lab kits to students to enable them to complete various assignments at where they are at their residences. And some are using software that may be adaptive, or bringing on online new software applications that they hadn't previously been using. Graduate courses are proceeding as expected. Clinical placements, internships, and other placements have created some challenges because they're not totally under our control in terms of whether students are allowed to engage. Some actually canceled those experiences before we were able to engage with the various entities, and have been working with them to ensure students are not going to be harmed by the cancellation of that internship or placement, or try to structure what that will look like to ensure that they've met the objectives of that experience. Accreditation agencies have been critical there, and keeping track of how they're responding in this time has also been something we've kept our eye on. In terms of exams, I already mentioned, we encourage people to move away from that synchronous exam schedule type of assessment and think more creatively about how to assess whether the objective has been met. And then I also have been, because we've been so active in adaptive courseware, have done some speculation as to whether the adaptive courseware helped us in this transition. I think it certainly helped our faculty in terms of their ability to adapt courseware or to adapt their course to this online and digital platform. I don't have any data to suggest that it actually made it easier, but it certainly took away their fears associated with how material was going to be covered, structured, and then scaffolded in terms of how they would scaffold that learning on top of a fundamental set of principles within their course. The fact that publishers made textbooks available for free was huge for our students, particularly for those students who couldn't return to get their textbooks and went straight back to their family homes. I'm going to close out with two other categories of quick observations. One are the worries. So I'll start with our worries that we have going forward. First, it's difficult to judge where students are physically and also how they're able to remain engaged in their learning. You may have seen a recent article in the New York Times about how the classroom created an equal opportunity for students to engage in materials and engage with each other. And now that they've sent back the circumstances that we don't understand or appreciate, it's difficult to know how that'll affect their learning and their experiences within that learning environment. Also, we worry about how are we going to come back together. Of course, on our campus, we're tracking other countries. We realize that the US is not likely to implement some of the tracking, the whereabouts of every person systems that have been implemented in some countries. So we're also watching closely the developments of treatments, vaccines, antivirals, drugs to stop the cytokine storm that results in lung inflammation that leads to pneumonia, and then therapies to manage complications in patients to see how we as a society ultimately might recover from this. If I look at my overall observations and talking with our team and reflecting on what we've learned, first of all, I've already mentioned that courses may not be recognizable from what they were when the semester started, yet we're confident our faculty are covering the learning objectives. And I, like Beth said, I'm just amazed by how well faculty have responded. I hear from students that the faculty have been so compassionate and understanding. And at the same time, I've heard from students that, from faculty, that the students have really adapted to this quite well and have engaged them in whole new ways. Collaboration on campus has been amazing, but also collaboration with other institutions. That's been really refreshing to us as an academic institution, the sharing of knowledge, the sharing of information. The SEC provosts have been communicating regularly and sharing updates. The provosts within our system have been sharing updates and engaging each other as well. And that's been incredible. Sharing of materials that people have developed so people didn't have to start from ground zero. It's also incredible. And then this idea of colleagues learning alongside colleagues and empowering each other. That was another observation we came away with that really contributed to our success and an incredible benefit not only to our faculty, but to our students who got the benefits of that. And then I'll wrap up here, Karen, and turn it back over to you. One other last observation is one that was made by Dr. John Young. He's our Elsie Hood Teacher of the Year this year. He had to do his video online, and we served it up on the day that the ceremony would have normally been held. And he got to choose his background, and it will probably be not only the shortest address in our history, but it's probably going to be the most unique. But he has an incredible message, and I'm just going to take out one snippet of what he said. He said, "Negativity and calamity do not define us. They give us the means to define our true selves and chart a path to who we want to become." Stop and think about that for a minute. Negativity and calamity do not define us. They give us the means to define our true selves and chart a path to who we want to become. I think that's truly happened for our faculty. I've heard faculty who have said to me that, if I'd have known this was coming, I would have retired. But at the same time, I am a better faculty member and a better professor because I went through this. I think that's true of our academic institutions as well, as we've worked together and realized that we're all connected in this fabric of academic institutions that are on the course to change society through education. I think who we want to become as an academy is also on the table for us to truly define. So I'll stop there, Karen, and I look forward to the Q&A.
Thanks, Noel. Thanks, Beth. Really inspirational work, I think. Not that we wanted to be here, not that we wish to be here, but I think universities have responded. I know APLU hears from our universities that not only have we responded to our own continuity, we're participating in active ways to help and support either the research that needs to be done, the frontline healthcare that needs to be done, the services that need to be done. So I think we should also be mentioning we're still functioning as community, as part of the community from which we are working. I want to go ahead and ask you a couple of the questions that have come in. The first one has a lot more to do with the pass-fail. So does the move to pass-fail impact financial aid, veterans benefits, future grad school prospects? We're counseled against going pass-fail. This is obviously somebody at a different college due to negative downstream impacts. How do you mitigate those? How are you guys working through those problems at both your universities? Beth, if you want to go first. Beth, you're on mute.
We did talk a lot about that. We have indicated when the pass-fail had a caveat that if your accrediting body would not allow a certain set of courses to be pass-fail, the units could say these cannot. But it was not just a matter of us saying, well, in biology, we think this course is really important, and so we're not going to let it be pass-fail. It's only if an accrediting body would prevent it. And what we have found so far is that most accrediting bodies have been equally flexible. The other thing that I think is true, I have, on those big leadership things, I have coined this semester as the semester with an asterisk. And what I think that will mean is that many institutions, when Duke and Carnegie Mellon and others go to a pass-fail system, Yale has a pass-fail system, that people are going to say, this is the semester where we are going to count passes as fulfilling a requirement. The LMC, the medical boards, have all pushed medical schools to accept. Now, they haven't all accepted yet, but many have. Ours has, many in the ACC have accepted that they will take passes for courses that they used to require a C in for admissions to medical school. So admissions boards are changing, I think. I cannot imagine any grad school, since grad schools are often going to a more holistic admissions process anyway. I used to be a graduate dean, so I was part of those discussions. I think that is unlikely to have any impact on graduate school admission. I think we have to be careful going forward that we don't throw all assessments out of the window. But for this semester, I think that it's a recognition that it's truly calamity, as Noel used the word, that it's a crisis, and that we are responding to a crisis in a way that lets our students stay on track. If a student feels that we are thinking of little boot camps for a student who may feel that I might need a little more instruction in calculus before I start calculus 2 or whatever, we are trying to figure out how our Reach tutoring services can provide some of that.
Thanks. Noel, did you want to add anything?
I just want to add that I agree with that. I think that we're going to see various admission boards and others try to wrestle with what's happened across the entire nation. Until then, we've advised students to think about, if we know at the time, we will pass that information along. Until then, we encourage them to keep the grade that was assigned. If they're uncertain about it, or if they're uncertain about how a group will react, they certainly have that option.
Mm-hmm. Since this is connected, I'm going to jump to one of the other questions, and then we'll move to some of the other panelists. And as some of the other Q&A, I would encourage the participants to go ahead and keep putting in questions either in the Q&A, and it's okay to do in the chat. But there is a particular question around graduate courses. What have you done for the graduate courses? And I know you both talked about, you know, the whether or not there were entry limitations, but have you been able to extend graduate support in any ways? I mean, in some ways, I think we're talking obviously more about the PhD programs than I think we're talking about the master's, but certainly give us some ideas. And this time we'll let Noel go first. Mm-hmm.
So we've offered some support for graduate students, mainly through the departments. And so the departments have handled that in our interactions with the graduate program coordinators and our graduate dean. They have been interacting with students who find themselves in difficult situations or find themselves with challenges based on family circumstances back home, and they can't get back home to help. And so we've supported them in that way. A lot of the courses have progressed in this new environment, and my interactions with the faculty have indicated that. One of the challenges we've had, though, is support for graduate students who are funded on research projects, and the research projects are not progressing as they were originally planned. And so how we handle those situations have been on a case-by-case basis.
It's pretty much the same for us, except that, well, so the pass-fail policy extended to graduate students and graduate programs, not professional schools, but graduate schools. And except for that in graduate, C- is a pass, D+ is not, and in undergrad, Ds are passes. So that's one distinction, but that was within the policy. The other thing is, some of our grad students have said that they're actually working harder because their faculty have given them a lot of projects that they were kind of holding off on, that could be done at home, online, whatever. And so they said, you know, I think this is actually more work than being in the lab every day, but at least it's work, and at least it's productive work. We are sort of talking with some faculty kind of one-on-one about making sure that the demands are appropriate to the work that the faculty is owed by that student. I think that we have had, you know, we have relaxed deadlines for graduation, deadlines for turning in dissertations, all those sorts of things to try to accommodate doctoral students and master's students who are writing theses. But it seemed to be less problematic for grad students. Oh, and we have a kind of rich professional development program at the graduate school, and we have continued to do those virtually. So we're still providing some support to students, and they have an opportunity to gather at least through Teams and see one another while they're working.
I'm going to shift back to what's coming up very soon. And Dr. Boehm, you had already started talking a little bit about what you're doing for summer.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a particular question about fees, right? So normally some of our fees are bundled into some of our course prices, and in some cases they're not. But in particular, what are you thinking about the fee structure that we have in terms of rec fees, or in some cases, I guess there's union fees, there's distance ed fees, other kinds of fees that we normally bundle when people are getting access to services. So I know you already said your registrations are up, which is a great news, but I wonder if you could also answer that part of the question. And Noel, if there's anything you'd like to share about summer, please do after Beth tells us what's going on.
So I don't think we fully answered the question of what we're going to do with like the rec fee going forward. We know what we're doing retroactively. So people who we're not providing refunds for those fees for the spring, but we are providing. So let's say you're a student who is graduating, you have access to our Student Recreational Center, which is a really one of those kind of plush centers, but you have to pay for it after you graduate. Well, now we're saying you don't have to pay for it for 6 months, whatever it is that seems fair by the time this is over, that we will extend your free use of it by as much time as we are prohibited from letting you in that center. So I doubt that we will return fees or we will eliminate fees because they are bundled into our tuition. But what we're not charging is the additional fee that we would charge for online education. And we had a process where our students actually paid not only for a small fee for online, but they had to pay for the course outside of full load. So if they took an online course, it was an additional, they had to pay per credit hour again. We are eliminating that for summer. So we sort of feel like they won't have a whole lot of complaints about fees because the tuition is lower for them.
Great.
We are also moving online courses, our courses online for the summer, and like University of Louisville, we have bundled fees into our tuition, and so we charge tuition, we charge a capital improvement fee, and a student activity fee. The student activity fee is still going to be used to support activities that are done virtually through groups, and a lot of that spend takes place in the fall. And so that's not on the table for us. And then neither is tuition, in a sense that it's still supporting a lot of the activities that they're getting already. Mm-hmm. And so that's how we're handling that. We are within a larger IHL system within the state, and so we're still waiting for approval to issue refunds or other things on housing and meal plans and other things. We're still waiting for guidance from the system on that.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I'm going to switch over to another question. This question has to do with how do we learn from what we're doing right now. So it had to start with a little bit around surveys for teaching and learning, but I think the question probably could be drawn a little bit bigger is we are very good and had been in the past about what I often call as a post-mortem, but we're now in a situation where we have to learn very, very quickly and adapt our summer and potentially some of the things that we're doing for fall. So what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about external resources that would help you pick up? I mean, I don't know if that's artificial intelligence. Are you thinking about other kinds of survey products out there that might help you pick up what didn't go quite as well? Because right now we hear that things are going pretty well. I mean, we've got to always improve, but what are the kinds of things you think about in terms of learning from what's happening this semester?
So just as a quick thing, we haven't really talked about what kind of surveys we're going to do beyond this semester, but we did incorporate into the teaching evaluations, and this was part of the you can include or not include them, a series of, I think it was either 7 or 9 questions that we decided on at the end to students asking about the transition to online. What went well, what didn't go well, and not so much, and this will be collected in aggregate. It will not identify particular, faculty will see their own, but what we see will be an aggregate, so that we're not outing Professor Jones, right? You know, but to see what students think about the transition. And I think that it might even address some of the questions about what do you need to do to be prepared to learn online? Because I think that's a really good question. We were worried more about faculty preparedness to teach rather than student preparedness to learn. And when we had so many people saying, I'm going to withdraw because I don't want to learn online, we were sort of stunned by that. And so I think that going forward, we won't be so stunned. We did provide students with a kind of a handbook of online things about how to organize yourself so you'll be an effective online learner, how to engage with the faculty through online, how to make sure that you're keeping pace, all those sorts of things, how to ask a faculty member if I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. So we did give, when I sent out the pass-fail policy, I also sent out this handbook that, you know, it's really like 4 pages of advice for learning online to sort of say, not only are we going to let you try it and you can go to pass fail as late as the last day, but we're also giving you advice on how to do this well.
Yeah, there's a couple elements to that question. One is, how are we learning from what we've done? And our academic innovations group is working up surveys to ask faculty and students about what didn't go well. The things that are really mission critical or critical for them to continue are being identified through our caseworker, through responding to the online forums, or our reach out to students to find those who have not plugged in and figure out what their issues are and work to solve them. I might also mention we launched a capital campaign, or a campaign, what we call an Ignite campaign, like a crowdsource funding campaign to help students. Foundation money allows us to help students in lots of innovative ways with housing insecurity, food insecurity. Our food bank has given out more food since this started than they did the whole semester. So it's really been an incredible outpouring of support for our students in that way. And then lining those resources up with them has been helpful. We've also helped them we have a Keep Learning website that walks them through strategies for success in the learning remotely, how to get started, how to create a space, what kind of resources they need to have access to. So we're giving them information in that world. So the hope is that we have a safety net built to catch those students who have major problems now. But you're asking a slightly different question about how do we learn from this so that we ensure that we, going forward, don't create more issues or take the learning to the next level within this environment. Of course, we all hope that the summer will be the last semester that we have to do this all online, but we need to take the opportunity to learn all we can so that we're prepared for whatever might happen.
Right, and we hope that we emerge out of this with a faculty that has a different skill set, leadership that has a different skill set and a different understanding. You know, I always say that we don't want to let a good crisis go to waste. And I think that we are trying really hard here to learn as we go, learn as we walk. And I think that the goal is to improve how we deliver courses, not just online, but face-to-face as well. The other thing, we also have an emergency fund that we've always had, and we've had campaigns to increase that. We have found that 66% of the students who have asked for help from that fund are Pell eligible students. Another 40% are underrepresented minorities. And that could overlap, right? Those are Venn diagrams. And then first generation are asking for 32% of those funds. So we know that those funds are being used by our students most in need. We've had 140 requests so far. We're working our way through those. Our average award is $300. It's often going for rent. And we have a food pantry too that's being utilized pretty heavily.
I want to keep going with the learning as we enter into fall, which we obviously don't know. But I would like both of you to talk about your entering classes, right? And how you're sort of planning for that in both scenarios of us being wonderfully back on campus, or at least some of us in some ways, and thinking about how we engage those entering students, particularly in ways that are different than what we expected. And part of that is how do we, I know you talked a little bit about sort of the assessment role of other kinds of assessments when we were thinking about accreditation and stuff, but in many cases we have placement types of issues. So how are we thinking about our entering classes? What kinds of planning are you doing for those? Beth, you want to go first?
So for the class that's coming in, there will be some students who had planned on taking the ACT a second time. In Kentucky, ACT is a requirement of your junior year. And so there will be students who took it last year when they were juniors, who are now seniors, who will not be able to take it a second time. We are allowing them to submit an essay that would identify their strengths, and so that we will use that as our alternative measure if their old ACT didn't meet our requirements. For the incoming, so for people who are applying in the fall for admission in 21, we have decided to allow the possibilities. We weren't going to go fully essay optional, but to allow students who missed this March's Kentucky ACT, they're not planning on redoing that. So that they're just saying this year's group will not take the ACT for free, right? They didn't have to pay for it. So we're going to say that that's not required for them, but again, an essay will have to be submitted in place of it that will talk about some of the strengths they have that will show their readiness for college.
Yeah, so in terms of placements, first of all, on the graduate school side, we've given programs the option to waive the GRE or GMAT if appropriate or necessary. We haven't made similar adjustments on the ACT score side for students. And so we're keeping track of that and its impact, and haven't heard at this point reports of students who don't have an ACT or would have taken it in that last session, but we'll deal with those on a case-by-case basis.
So we're getting close to our time, and I thank you so much for being willing to share this time, because I know you haven't stopped having nonstop meetings about planning and work and activities going on your campus. But I would want to give both of you a chance to provide a sort of wrap-up statement. And since Beth started first, I'll start with you, Noel, and then Beth will go to you, and we'll finish up.
Sure. Thanks, Karen. Appreciate that. And I appreciate the perspectives that Beth has shared as well. This has been helpful for us in thinking about what we do and how we are moving forward in this time of crisis. One of the observations that was made by a ceramics professor, I mentioned Matt Long, one of our ceramics faculty members, who mentioned that some of the things that we're also missing that we can't take for granted is that human contact and interaction. That we can talk to each other through technology, we can engage, verbally with each other, but we can't necessarily connect with each other in the same way. And so as we do move forward, we have to think about what are all the experiences and things that we had and we created for students on our college campuses. And then how are we trying to address or meet those needs? And so those are the things that we are thinking about, breaking things down to the very basics of what we do and why we do it and why it's important. And then trying to figure out how do we overcome the environment that we're currently in to make sure we're still delivering that. Thank you.
Thanks, Noel.
I think that one of the things that I see as a positive that comes out of this is that we have engaged faculty in different ways and encouraged them to be more inclusive in their teaching, more compassionate, to put students first, and to trust that we will help them do that. And so I feel like we're going to come out of it as a slightly more student-centered institution. I feel like the University of Louisville has often been a faculty-centered institution. Faculty right. I was chair of the Senate, so I am part of that. I'm not criticizing it, just saying it is. And I think that we will emerge from this as a more student-focused institution, and I see that as a very positive thing.
Well, I can't thank you both enough for taking the time to do this, and I know I also had to have both of you in for a prep session, and I know how important your time is. But I think at APLU, and particularly the Personalized Learning Consortium, we think this is really important work. We are, and I started off the beginning of this webinar, we recognize the huge change that has had to occur by removing to remote. And by and large, we think that the IT learning infrastructure has held steady. We know there are Zoom bombings. Luckily, we didn't have one today, right? But there are other kinds of things happening, and we think it's generally positive. We want to continue to work side by side with institutions around how we improve digital learning, particularly for those students in high risk. And you both have shown us that those are students that are really important to you, and you both universities have gone out of your way to make sure that those students are taken care of. So we love hearing those stories. I know from a larger world, both of you are involved in our work, and that work at the Every Learner Everywhere network continues. We are continuing to become better institutions, and I love the way you put that, Beth. I hope that we do all become much more student focused. I think it's very possible, and I think we have seen some incredible work being done very rapidly, and I hope it continues, and I want to thank you both for being here, and have a great day. I really appreciate you both coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate it.